Today tell you the detailed story of how greed, incompetency, aligned with the wrong design of a ship, formed a deadly cocktail that claimed the lives of 304 people on board, including 250 students from one school, all of whom would have been saved had appropriate action been taken timely. My name is Maurice Moniki. Welcome to Historicals. The date today is 15th April 2014. MV Sewol, a transport ship for cargo and passengers, is said to leave the port at Incheon, approximately 50 kilometers or 32 miles east of Seoul, South Korea's capital, at 18:30 hours. The port authorities had issued a low visibility warning 1 hour earlier, 17:30 hours, due to a thick fog that had restricted visibility to less than a kilometer, therefore delaying Sewol's departure. By the time the weather got better and she received clearance for her departure, it was 21:00 hours, 2.5 hours later than the scheduled time. She was set for a 13-hour journey to Jeju Island, 264 miles further south. The temperate climate, breathtaking beaches, and a wide array of flora and fauna makes it a coveted tourist destination and a perfect getaway for families and students who are seeking time off books and strict classroom rules. The 13-hour journey meant that the passengers would spend the night aboard the ferry with a mid-morning arrival. Most of the passengers spent the night launching fireworks from the ship's decks and taking pictures. After all, the voyage was during a time when smartphones were owned by almost every human being. This is 2014. Aboard were 443 passengers and 33 crew members, a total of 476 persons on board. Of the 443 passengers were 325 second-year students from Danwon High School on a field trip to Jeju Island. The ship was also carrying 2,142 tons in total weight, inclusive of 185 cars and trucks, most of which were not properly secured. The ship was commanded by 69-year-old Captain Lee Jun-sok, with over 40 years' worth of experience at sea, who was in as a replacement for the regular captain, Captain Shin. He was familiar with the route and nothing path-related should have caused issues for him. Captain Lee signed a 1-year contract with Chonghejin Marine as the captain of MV Sewol, with monthly salary of 2,500 USD. Most of the 33 crew that accompanied Lee were temporary or part-time staff. The next morning, Thursday 16th April, at about 08:00 hours, delicacies were served to passengers at the comfort of their cabins as the ship cruised East China waters. 20 minutes, when the ship was 2.5 miles from entering the Bengal Channel, that mate Park Han-kyul ordered helmsman Chu Jun-ki to change the steering system from autopilot to manual steering. The Bengal Channel, located in the Korean peninsula, a shortcut about 12 miles southwest of Jindo Island, was infamously known for its underwater currents, and it was therefore important to exercise extreme caution when navigating a ship through it. Though parts of the channel contained rock hazards and shallow waters, they were not in the immediate vicinity of the ship's usual path. At this point, MV Sewol was traveling at a steady speed of 19 knots, and the destination being just 150 minutes toward the south, Jeju Island was only 50 miles away. As the vessel was exiting the channel, Park and Cho was standing close to the ship's wheel at the bridge, and Captain Lee was not present at the bridge at that time. It is at this time, at 08:48 hours, the ship made a series of turns to the right in an attempt to realign its course to the south, one turn so abrupt that it initiated the demise of the vessel. At 08:46 hours, Park ordered Cho to change the course from 135 degrees to 140 degrees, which Cho undertook. At 08:48 hours, Park, upon checking on the radar that the ship's current course was set to 140 degrees, ordered Cho to change its course further to 145 degrees, an order Cho consequently undertook. It is at this time that Park realized that the ship began listing to starboard and immediately ordered Cho to turn the wheel to port, whose purpose was to undo the listing and bring the ship to a balanced state. But when Cho began executing the order, she exclaimed in an unsettled voice, quote, "The wheel is not working." The vessel continued to list, and the listing was magnified by the unsecured cargo, which began moving to the side closest to water. Under this circumstance, the restoring force of the vessel was extended, and at this speed, MV Sewol listed 20 degrees to port. The ship began taking water via the side door of the cargo loading bay and the car entrance at the stern, and then opened hatches and windows along the decks on the port side. Cho stopped the engine, although the reason as to why he did so is disputed. Ship's mate and helmsmen arrived at the bridge, including Captain Lee, who was in his private cabin as all this was happening. Park was crying uncontrollably as the others tried taking charge of the situation. With no thrust from the now off engines, the vessel started drifting sideways and the listing continued. During the initial stages of a large ferry like this one capsizing, it's a relatively slow and unnoticeable ordeal, at least from the passenger's perspective. As the vessel began sinking, Communication Officer Kang Hesang made an announcement, quote, "Do not move. Just stay where you are. It's dangerous if you move, so just stay where you are." The announcement was repeated, urging passengers to stay put even as their compartments began flooding with water. At 08:52 hours, the first emergency call was made, not by the crew, but by one Choi Dukha, a Danwon High School student aboard the ferry. He called 119 reporting that Sewol had begun capsizing.
살려주세요. 배가 침몰된 것 같아요.
배가 침몰해요?
배 이름이 뭡니까, 배 이름? 세월호요, 세월호.
His call was connected to Mokpo Coast Guard, located in South Korea mainland. Mokpo Coast Guard Station dispatched a patrol vessel number 123 to the scene under the instruction to survey the area and rescue passengers as quickly as possible. At 08:55 hours, Sewol's crew made their first distress call to Jeju Vessel Traffic Service (VTS) and asked them to notify the Korean Coast Guard (KCG) since the ferry was in danger. Jeju VTS made a call to Jeju Coast Guard and realized the patrol vessel had already been dispatched. At 09:01 hours, a crew member reported the situation to Chonghejin Marine, the company that owned the vessel. At 09:06 hours, Mokpo Coast Guard informed Jindo VTS of the incident and asked them to take action, since they were closer to the sinking ferry. Jindo VTS alerted 2 other ships within the vicinity, with one confirming visual contact with Sewol. 12 minutes later, the ship was leaning more than 50 degrees to port. A few minutes later, VTS ordered the crew to inform passengers to wear life jackets. At 09:25 hours, the VTS, having little information so as to make an evacuation decision, they asked Captain Lee to make the choice himself. Even at this time, the communication officer and Captain Lee still urged passengers to stay put and not leave their cabins. All communications were cut off between VTS and Sewol at around 09:38 hours. Several minutes later, around 150 passengers who did not heed to the announcements left their cabins and jumped into the frigid East China waters. At around 09:40 hours, rescuers from vessel number 123 and other ships that had gathered made an announcement asking people to leave their cabins and jump into the water, while at the same time rescuing those in the water already. However, most people still trapped deep inside the ferry's cabins didn't hear the announcement. Captain Lee abandoned the ship and was rescued. The ship's stern was fully submerged barely 20 minutes past 11:00 hours, and of the 2 meters high and 25 meters long hull, only a section remained above water. At 11:28 hours, the Korean Navy Ship Salvage Unit (SSU) was deployed to the scene. At this point, many students on board were well aware of what is about to befall them, and they sent heartbreaking messages to their parents and relatives. One such text read, quote, "Mom, this might be my last chance to tell you I love you." His mother replied but did not get an answer. Another one read, quote, "Dad, I can't walk out because the ship is tilted too much and I don't see anyone in the corridor." By noon, only 50 centimeters of the ship was above water, and at 13:03 hours, the ship had completely rolled over and fully submerged. Around 290 passengers were still trapped inside, and with every passing second, their chances of survival dwindled. They would soon cease being passengers and become victims of the disaster. At 14:42 hours, 150 Special Forces personnel, including 40 scuba divers, were deployed. At this point, 392 personnel were involved in the operation. Several minutes past 17:00 hours, SSU personnel initiated undersea operations, with the hope of rescuing anyone still lucky enough to be alive at this point, with water temperatures at 54 degrees Fahrenheit or 12 degrees Celsius and 4 hours since the ship fully submerged. At 20:00 hours, operations were called off due to low visibility. The following day, Thursday 17th April, more units were deployed for the operation, and as of 06:00 hours, 171 ships, 29 aircrafts and 30 divers were involved in the rescue operation, with the number reaching 555 divers before 10:00 hours. Around 14:00 hours, rescue operation was ceased due to bad weather conditions. As of the morning of 17th April, 174 people had been rescued, 4 had died and 284 were still missing. By 08:00 hours, 179 people had been rescued, 6 had died, and 290 were still missing. At 22:00 hours, the death toll had risen to 14. The following week, the body of the student who had made the first distress call during the initial moments of Sewol's tragic end, Choi Dukha, was found, Over the course of the following months, the death toll rose into hundreds, and as of 22nd July 2014, the day that marked the recovery of the body of the last cabin crew member, the death toll stood at 294, with 10 still missing. Though accidents happen due to a chain of complex events, most of which humans have little to no control over, the results of the investigations conducted by the Korean authorities concerning the biggest marine disaster in South Korea revealed causes that were largely sparked by human error on that fateful day and even years before, in conjunction with incompetency shown by the rescue authorities and those at the helm. It is 1994. A shipbuilding and engineering company based in Nagasaki, Japan, have built an enormous 145.6-meter-long ferry and will operate under Japan-based airline ferry company. She is named Ferry Namino and will be transporting cargo and passengers for the next 2 decades. With a capacity of 850 persons including crew and a cargo bay that can house 150 vehicles, she is a reasonable investment for the company. After 18 years, airline ferry company decides to sell the vessel. Though old and dilapidated, on 8th October, Chonghajin Marine Company pays a whopping 1.6 billion won for her acquisition. She is renamed Sewol and undergoes a series of repairs and modifications for the next 4 months. For the company to get more profit from their newly acquired vessel, they stacked an extra 2 decks of passengers, increasing the capacity by 116 people and expanded the cargo space. As a result of these modifications, her tonnage increased by 239 tons to over 6,500 tons. The center of gravity was also moved up by 0.51 meters due to the addition of stacked-up desk, which compromised the stability of the vessel. Since the higher the center of gravity is, the more susceptible an object is to topple over if pushed. As required, the ship underwent inspection by Korean Register of Shipping (KRS) for it to be awarded a license for operation. During the process of approving this modification, KRS reduced the amount of cargo that could be carried from 2,437 tons to less than 1,000, and increased ballast from 1,337 tons to 1,703 tons. The aftermath was that the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries revoked the company's license to operate ferries on the Incheon-Jeju Island routes on May 2014. On that fateful day, Sewol was carrying 3,608 tons of cargo, which was more than 3 times the limit proposed by KRS, and included 131 tons of containers, 920 tons of trucks, cars and heavy equipment that were to be used as building materials for naval bases in Jeju Island, and 1,164 tons of general goods. Sewol's off-duty captain and first mate reported the overloading, but the company ignored and threatened to fire them. To add to the already heavy and unstable vessel, the crew pumped out hundreds of tons of ballast water from the bottom of the ship in order to accommodate the additional cargo. In the ballast tanks, Sewol was carrying only 580 tons of ballast water, which was much less than the recommended 2,030 tons for this journey. This made the vessel more likely to list and capsize. The combination of the high center of gravity, lack of ballast water, and excess cargo spelled doom for this ship. The overloaded cargo was also improperly secured, especially vehicles, as seen in this CCTV footage in the cargo bay, minutes after the ship began to list. You see, several months before the accident, Chonghajin Marine Company received several awards in logistics development, probably due to the captain's behavior of operating for high profits and less workloads. But on the flip side, the company had financial pressures due to an illicit flow of money to company owners, family members, and an affiliated religious group. This illegal financial outflow made the company adopt a tendency to prioritize maximum profits rather than passenger safety and well-being, of course in an attempt to increase income and service the withdrawals. The aftermath was that, on 8th May 2014, the chief executive of Chonghajin Marine Company, Kim Han-sik, was found guilty of negligence and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, and fortunately for him, upon appeals, the sentence was reduced to 7 years. The former chairman of Chonghajin Marine Company, Yo Byung-young, ignored summons by the prosecutor and went into hiding. On the 22nd May, the court issued an arrest warrant and offered a 50 million won reward for information leading to his arrest. 3 days later, the reward was increased to 500 million won. On the 21st July 2014, a body believed to be his was discovered 415 kilometers south of Seoul. 6 other Chonghajin officials were found guilty and received prison sentences. Investigators have argued that Captain Lee is the one to blame for most of what happened on that day, if not all. First, he chose to use the Mengo Channel, a short but risky route to make up for the 2.5-hour delayed departure. At the same time, he chose to stay in his cabin, leaving only a fairly experienced crew at the wheel, who in turn took the turns too sharply and quickly. As if that wasn't enough, when things went south, he left the ship disguised as a passenger and was among the first people to be rescued, even after earlier on insisting to the passengers that they should stay put and not leave their cabins. A captain is supposed to be a leader and should offer essential directive in the event of such an occurrence. After leaving the ship, the now freaked out passengers still in their cabins were not aware of what was happening outside the vessel and whether to expect help or miracles. This was against the South Korean law that clearly stated the captain should remain on the ship in the event of such an unfortunate situation. The aftermath was that, on 11th April 2014, he was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 36 years imprisonment, with the sentence being increased to life imprisonment on 28th April 2015, after appeals by the prosecutor. On 11th November 2014, Park Ji-hoo, the chief engineer, was also jailed for 30 years on charges of homicide through gross negligence. It was reported that members of the crew drank beer during the initial moments of Sewol capsizing, instead of diligently organizing rescue plans. 13 other crew members were sentenced up to 20 years imprisonment for violating maritime law and abandoning the ship. 3 crew members, Jong, Kim, and Park, were labeled heroes by survivors for staying on board and helping passengers escape. Unfortunately for them, all the 3 went down with the sinking vessel. Several days after the disaster, outcry ensued. The masses were furious and outraged, expressing their discontentment with the media and how the government of the day was handling the situation. The South Korea's media was heavily criticized for the initial false reporting of the disaster, where they claimed everyone had been saved, therefore giving a false wave of hope to the victims' families. South Korea's president at that time, Park Geun-hye, received widespread criticism for her low response and unmoved behavior that she portrayed on the day of the disaster and months later. Her government was blamed for overseeing the fake reporting by the media in an attempt to prioritize public image over the lives of its citizens. Her government also refused to accept help from other countries and downplayed the severity of the disaster. This reason spelled doom for her position as the president, and she was ultimately impeached on 9th December 2016. Moon Jae-in was elected as president after Park left office and immediately began thorough investigations concerning the disaster. Documents found revealed that Park had made a secret blacklist of artists that would be barred from government sponsorship. Any artist that commemorated the Sewol's victim in his artwork found themselves in the list. Members of Park administration were also sentenced up to 3 years imprisonment for their involvement in creation of the illegal lists. Upon subsequent investigations, it was revealed that Park spent the early hours of the rescue operation in her bedroom, then shortly met with a hairdresser and would only show up for emergency meetings at 5 p.m., more than 8 hours since the ferry sent their first distress call. Her national security officials and chief staff were arrested and prosecuted for manipulating the records of her whereabouts on that day. 22nd March 2017, 3 years later, plans to refloat the wreck of the ship that lay on its port side, 40 meters below the sea surface, were initiated. A Chinese company was mandated with conducting the operation. The vessel was loaded onto a semi-submersible vessel and docked at New Mokpo port. It was escorted by 5 maritime patrol vessels, and a barge ship that was carrying the parents and the relatives of the 9 still missing passengers followed behind. While at Mokpo Newport, the wreck was to undergo a series of cleaning procedures, which included fumigation for about 2 weeks before the forensics team would hop in and search for the bodies. At this point, only partial remains would be retrieved and DNA testing used to identify them. The search operations came to an end on 19th October 2018, with 172 survivors, 299 dead, and 5 still missing to date. Danon High School, though currently has resumed to a state of normalcy, was the most hit by the MV Sewol Ferry disaster. The school lost 3/4 of its second-year students. Out of the 325 students and 14 teachers who undertook the voyage, 75 students were rescued, 250 of them went down with the ferry, 3 teachers were rescued, and 11 are still dead or missing. A permanent commemorative classroom, full of flowers, pictures and letters offering condolences from friends and family, exists outside the school in memory of the children and the teachers killed on that day. One letter reads, quote, "Sehyong, this is Dad. I will never forget you. I'm so sorry that was not there to save you." The class has been maintained to look as exactly as it was before the day the children left for the field trip.